Hey, welcome to Mark chapter 2 in our reading plan. You can always find this reading plan at narrative.church. Just scroll down a little bit on the front page, and there you'll find a link to the reading plan as we go through the book of Mark. Now, this last week we were in chapter 2 for our sermon. We'll actually be in chapter 2 again this Sunday for a little bit more so that we could space the weeks out correctly. But I want to share with you this morning, afternoon, whenever you're watching this, from Luke chapter 2, and I'm going to go ahead and start in verse 1, and I'm going to read to verse 12. And when he, Jesus, returned to Capernaum after some days, it was reported that he was at home, and many were gathered there, so that there was no more room, not even at the door. And he was preaching the word to them. And they came, bringing to him a paralytic carried by 4 men. And when they could not get near him because of the crowd, they removed the roof above him. And when they had made an opening, they let down the bed on which the paralytic lay. And when Jesus saw their faith, he said to the paralytic, "Son, your sins are forgiven." Now some of the scribes were sitting there questioning in their hearts, "Why does this man speak like that? He is blaspheming. Why does this man speak like that? Who can forgive sins but God alone?" And immediately Jesus, perceiving in his spirit that they thus questioned within themselves, said to them, "Why do you question these things in your hearts? Which is easier, to say to the paralytic, 'Your sins are forgiven,' or to say, 'Rise, take up your bed and walk'? But that you may know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins." He said to the paralytic, "I say to you, rise, pick up your bed, and go home." And he rose and immediately picked up his bed and went out before them, so that they were all amazed and glorified God, saying, "We never saw anything like this." I mentioned this a little bit in my sermon on Sunday, but it's a really key story that here's a paralyzed man. Jesus has become so famous that his friends show up to the house and they can't get close to Jesus, so they open a hole in the roof and lower him in. Now, what's fascinating in this story is that Jesus looks at the man and instead of immediately healing him, says, "Your sins are forgiven." Which, of course, the scribes and the Pharisees get really frustrated that who is this man that he can forgive sins? That's a big deal. What Jesus is doing is he's declaring his authority over sin. And then when he senses what's going on with the scribes and the Pharisees, he tells them, "What's easier? For me to forgive his sins or for me to say, stand up and walk?" And then he looks at the paralytic and says, "Stand up and walk." I love this story because it reminds me of how Jesus comes not only to redeem us spiritually, but to heal us physically. Every Sunday when we say the confession of faith that we use from the Apostles' Creed, we say we believe in the resurrection. The joy we have in Jesus, the authority he has as king is over spiritual and physical. That we know in Revelations, it says one day everything will be made new and there will be no more tears. So Jesus will look at us and say, not only are your sins forgiven, but you are made new. You will be made perfect. And we look forward to that day, not only the spiritual healing, but the physical healing. That the resurrection, that new life in heaven is a huge blessing for us. Because Jesus is king of the physical and the spiritual. Dive into Mark chapter 3, and we'll see you again next week.